Hey everybody, this is Ken. I'm checking in from Brisbane, Australia. I just arrived this morning. I'm pretty tired and I just wanted to leave a quick video to encourage everyone to take the free mini course on deep restoration, which is up and running right now. You know, this is a course that's going to take you beyond basic healing categories, beyond basic inner healing categories, beyond basic deliverance categories. And this is where we really start trying to integrate everything into what I commonly call the integrated healing model. I know this concept is sometimes confusing to people, but the idea is that some healings have complex roots, and some of them even have triggers. Triggers are not the same as roots. Roots are what are laid down in the foundation, and triggers are the things that make whatever that root was go active and suddenly create a problem. A couple of weeks ago, as I make this video, I was speaking at a church where there was a man who had a condition in his feet. It's too long to go into, but it was a unique condition that I'd never heard of in all the years of praying for people. But I would say in many ways it was similar to fibromyalgia. This condition gave him so much pain that he was effectively crippled. But let me just say, I'm emphasizing the word effectively. He was not strictly and literally speaking a cripple, but the pain was so great that he could hardly walk to the bathroom. He seldom went to the dinner table to eat. Instead, his wife would bring him meals in his easy chair. And even if he wasn't standing, if he was simply sitting with the soles of his feet resting on the ground, even in a situation like that, he had excruciating pain. The only way to get around this was to keep his feet elevated. During the event that I was leading, he was on the front row each session, but he never came forward for prayer. And on Sunday morning, as I finished the sermon, he came forward first and foremost of everybody and asked me to pray with him. As he described his situation, he told me about the onset of this. And remember, one of the things we teach you to ask about is, when did it begin? And he said, it began actually, strangely, the very day that my now son-in-law came to me for permission to marry my daughter. I said, did you like him? Yeah. Okay, so probably not related to disliking the son-in-law or the soon-to-be son-in-law. And he said, I've often pondered if there was any connection between that permission request, we almost could say proposal of marriage, except obviously the young man wasn't proposing to this guy, although you can't assume that anymore in today's world. Anyway, so he said, I've often wondered if there was a linkage, and maybe I've wasted your time in telling you about all of this. And I said, no, you haven't wasted any time. I suspect this is much more deeply linked to your condition than you even realize. So we talked a little more about his history, and I won't go into all the details because this is supposed to be a short video and it's already too long. But let me just say this. The problem began before he was even born, because he was the last child in a large family. And at a period in time prior to his birth, I want to emphasize that because when I've told this story to a few people, they've missed it. Before he was even conceived, his mother had stepped out of the marriage, had had a paramour, a lover, and had ultimately come back to his father, her husband, and they had reconciled. And so this man that I was talking to was the love child of that reunion. Well, it sounds like a better story than a straight divorce that would have followed a typical adulterous situation. But one of the things I've learned along the road through the years is that adultery is far, far, far more serious than anybody thinks. I've often said that the 10 Commandments safeguard the most dangerous things in the universe as it pertains to human beings. And thou shalt not commit adultery is one of those commandments. And adultery, as we all know, is rampant in our time. So mom and dad reconciled. They decided to have a child to cement the reunion. He was that child. Now, just to be very clear, because people do ask, and I did too, he was not sired by the paramour. He was sired by the man who was married to his mother, and he said, I am his spitting image. There is absolutely no doubt that I am his son. All right, fair enough. Nobody ever really walked him through any of the particulars because remember, all of the adultery happened before he was even conceived. But no one ever walked him through all of that. It was just kind of an open secret in the house. The older children knew something of it, but no one would ever talk with him about it. After his father's death and at the funeral, so this is some years after his parents had been reunited, and as I'm telling you this story right now, from memory, he was 28 years old at the time of the funeral. Maybe I've got that slightly off, but I know he was in his 20s. And he did tell me the year. I just sometimes can't keep all the details in my head. His eldest sister approached him at the funeral and said, as far as the rest of us are concerned, you're from another family. You're not part of this family. We want nothing to do with you. And he was obviously shocked, hurt, trying to sort through all of this. What might this mean, etc. Well, he was okay in terms of his outward appearance, in terms of his functioning. But I would say that this situation had two roots. The first one was the adulterous affair of the mother, and the second one was this rejection, open, overt, explicit rejection by his elder sister on behalf of the other siblings at the funeral. Well, he didn't have any more contact with them because they refused to have anything to do with him. But when the young man who was going to be his son-in-law asked for his daughter's hand in marriage, this provoked something. And that something was this condition in his feet. Of interest here, his father had a foot condition too, but not this same one. His father had gout, but a very severe case of it, which is itself quite painful. Now, this tells me that there's something in the genetics of the family that's running down the family tree. I wouldn't be surprised if his grandfather similarly had had some kind of foot condition, although we didn't explore that. So his father had a weakness in the feet, and this is where this combination of the adultery in the family, coupled with the rejection by the sister, triggered by the proposal of marriage from this soon-to-be son-in-law, converged, and it manifested in the feet. And so the human genome can be combined in 70 trillion different combinations. But when we talk about family traits and that sort of thing, we're talking about things where the genetics are at least pointing in a similar direction. So while this man did not have gout, he had a unique condition. Like I said, I don't remember the name of it, but it had a 4-letter acronym, something like FYRP. But don't hold me to that because, again, I don't remember it. It manifested in his feet because of this, we'll call it a predisposition within the family tree towards weakness within the feet. So with all that background having been sussed out, and it took us about 25 minutes to do it, I prayed for his feet after praying through the rejection by his sister and the siblings, and also praying about the thing that I said to him, you probably didn't think this consciously. You probably did not explicitly have this thought, but probably down deep in your heart, there was a feeling, a sense of foreboding and dread as you contemplated this man marrying your daughter. Something like this: what if my daughter does to him what my mother did to my father? Or what if he does to her what my mother did to my father? Or what if they just don't make it and the marriage dissolves? And when I said that, he burst into tears. I'd obviously hit something that was very deep-seated, but had never been articulated and had never been thought about explicitly. So, having addressed that and knowing that it was really there, we not only prayed through the rejection by the siblings, we also prayed through that feeling of dread and foreboding which he felt but never articulated, and it wasn't even conscious. It was more of a feeling of discomfort as he agreed for this young man to marry his daughter. By the way, at the time of this event, which was, again, only a couple of weeks ago, the two of them are still married. They're in their 15th year of marriage, and they're doing fine. So as we look at this, we see how the integrated healing model works, and we see how the need for inner healing from the rejection, along with the need for dealing with the emotion which wasn't even articulated at the time of his receiving this request for his daughter's hand in marriage, how these two things converged and they resulted in a physical manifestation, which was the problem in the feet. Then we went back and dealt with the generational weakness in the feet and broke the power of whatever that iniquitous root was that created this openness to problems in the feet. And there was one single evil spirit. But I want to be clear, this was not principally a deliverance situation. Let me say it again, because a lot of you are still way too eager to jump into demons every time you run into a complex situation. It was primarily an inner healing situation, which arose from the rejection by his sister, 22 years his senior, and the other siblings. It also had a component in it, though, of the family weakness, which was manifested in his father's gout. In addition, his mother was a very cold and uncaring woman. Perhaps she wished she hadn't gone back to her husband. Who knows the circumstances under which she and the lover had broken up. Maybe she didn't have other choices. Maybe he rejected her. We just don't know what all of that was. But I also prayed into the adultery and the toxic effects of adultery within his own genetics, something that his siblings would not have had because they were all conceived and were pretty far along by the time he came along. He is the only one who would have carried that adulterous impact within his genes and blood because his mother had come back from the affair. Although she was married to the dad, although it was a legitimate union, although it was not unclean conception, the lingering effects of the adultery were never really dealt with. They simply came back together and it wasn't really spoken of again. So this is a really good example of the integrated healing model in practice. This is the kind of thing we are going to go after in this class on deep restoration. If you want to get good at healing difficult and complex situations, this class will help you get started in that next level of setting people free. Watch the free video at orbussm.com. Go down below to the very bottom and sign up using the links, and we'll see you in class in just a couple of weeks. God bless you.